When I was just 8 years old, my parents mercilessly threw me out of the house. When I was just 8 years old, my parents threw me out of the house. I wandered aimlessly through the cold night until my aunt found me and took me in. That night is burned into my memory forever. I remember the yelling, the sting of betrayal, and the sharp realization that my parents never truly wanted me. I'm Mia Anderson, now 23 years old, but my story doesn't begin here. It started 15 years ago, on the night I stopped being someone's daughter and started becoming my own person. That night I learned something painful, that love from parents isn't always unconditional. That night I lost my family. I was raised in Seattle, Washington, in a house that looked more like an art gallery than a place to live. Everything was polished, expensive, and immaculate, except for me. My parents, Jonathan and Catherine Anderson, were prominent lawyers known for their discipline and achievements. In their world, there was no tolerance for weakness, no room for failure, and certainly no patience for imperfection. They demanded excellence in all things, especially from their children. My younger brother, Adam, was everything they ever wanted. He was smart, outgoing, and naturally gifted at everything he tried. Each time he succeeded, they celebrated with enthusiasm. Hugs, praise, gifts, admiration. He was the perfect child, and me? I was just the other one. The mistake. No matter how hard I pushed myself, it never seemed to matter. If I got a B on a test, they'd stare at me like I had disgraced the family. When Adam got an A, it was a party. When I needed help with homework, I was told to figure it out on my own. If Adam needed help, they hired the best tutor in town. They treated his success as deserved. Mine? As accidental or insufficient. My entire childhood was spent chasing their attention. I convinced myself that if I just tried harder, if I worked long enough, they'd see me. Maybe finally they'd love me like they loved Adam. But nothing I did ever seemed to matter. When I achieved something, it was ignored. When I failed, it was amplified. And then when I was 8 years old, something inside that carefully constructed life cracked open. It was the night they decided I didn't belong, that I was no longer part of the family. It was freezing that evening. I had just walked home from school, backpack heavy on my shoulders, but the real weight sat deeper, in my chest. I had taken an important math test that day. I had studied for nights on end, poring over problems, trying to get every formula right. I wanted so badly to make them proud. I ended up with a C+, and I knew exactly what that meant. As I walked through the front door, I could hear their voices from the living room, sharp, loud, and filled with disapproval. I froze. The paper with my test score crumpled in my hand. "She's an embarrassment," my mother snapped, her words cutting the air like a knife. "We've given her every chance, every advantage, and this is how she repays us." My father's voice followed, cold and tired. "We've tried everything to shape her into someone capable, but she continues to prove she's not meant for success." The nausea in my stomach twisted into something worse. I stood there just outside the hallway, barely breathing. "She's lazy," he continued. "We push her and she never rises to the challenge." I bit my lip, trying not to cry. I'd tried, I really had. But to them, effort meant nothing if it didn't result in perfection. Then my mother said something I couldn't believe. "We can't keep doing this," she said. "Maybe it's time for her to leave." I felt my knees buckle slightly. Leave? Surely she didn't mean that. I was just 8. But after dinner they called me into the living room. My father sat stiffly on the couch, arms folded. My mother stood beside him, unreadable. Adam was nowhere in sight. He never had to be part of these moments. "Mia, we've talked," my father said. His voice flat and cold. "You're not meeting expectations, and frankly we're done trying." A chill crept up my spine. "Trying what?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Trying to fix you," my mother said without flinching. "If you can't live up to what we expect, maybe this isn't the right home for you." My breath caught. My hands trembled. Where would I go? I asked. My father sighed. "Figure it out." Something cracked inside me. I stepped forward, tears streaking down my cheeks. "Please," I begged. "I'll do better. I promise. Just don't send me away." I reached for my mother's hand. Instead, she struck me. Her fist collided with my cheek, hard. I stumbled backward, head ringing, nearly collapsing to the floor. For a moment, everything was silent. The world seemed to spin. Pain radiated from my cheek, deep and sharp. I touched the swelling skin, eyes wide with disbelief. I looked up at her. She didn't blink. "Get out," she said. Her voice was low, final. I turned to my father. Nothing. He wouldn't even meet my gaze. And that's when it hit me. They were done. There was nothing I could do to change that. The sting on my cheek spread, mixing with the grief in my chest. I didn't cry. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. I turned and ran upstairs. My fingers shook as I grabbed a small suitcase, tossing in clothes without thinking. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to go. Before leaving, I stopped to look around my room. Bare walls, a few faded drawings from when I was little, a bed that had never felt comforting. This had never really been my home. I picked up my backpack and suitcase, walked to the front door. My mother waited in the hallway, arms crossed. My father sat, flipping through his newspaper like nothing had happened. Adam still wasn't there. I paused. One last look. Maybe if I stared long enough, they'd change their minds. Maybe my mom would soften. Maybe my dad would say, "Wait," but they didn't. My mother opened the door. "Leave." I stepped outside. The night air hit me, cold and merciless. The door slammed shut behind me. I was alone. The streets of Seattle stretched out in front of me, dim and unfamiliar. I clutched my suitcase, the weight of it nothing compared to the ache in my chest. The sidewalk was cold beneath my feet. Streetlights flickered above me, casting long shadows that felt heavier than they should. I didn't know where to go. I had no destination, no plan, just a backpack, a sore cheek, and the sharp sting of rejection. All around me, life carried on. Cars passed. Laughter echoed from nearby homes. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. None of it felt real. I walked and walked. My legs ached, and the wind cut through my thin jacket. The cold pierced my skin, but I barely felt it. Hunger twisted in my stomach, reminding me I hadn't eaten since dinner. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered. I was a child, alone, discarded like I didn't exist. At some point, I stopped beneath a flickering street lamp. My arms were wrapped tightly around myself, trying to trap what little warmth I had left. My feet were sore, my face burned, and I was completely, utterly lost. Then I heard a voice. "Mia?" I froze. My head snapped toward the sound. It was familiar, warm, concerned. I blinked into the dark. A woman was approaching, eyes scanning my face. It was Mary, my aunt. For a second I didn't move. Was this real? Or was my mind finally breaking? She stepped closer, and the shock on her face deepened as she took in my bruised cheek and the suitcase at my side. "Oh my God, Mia," she said, kneeling. "What are you doing out here?" I opened my mouth, but no words came. How do you explain something like that? That your own mother hit you? That your father watched and said nothing? That they told you to get out, and meant it? Mary didn't wait for an explanation. She pulled me into a hug. The first real hug I'd had in years. It was warm, strong, safe. And just like that, I broke. The tears came, loud, aching sobs that I had held in for far too long. Mary didn't ask questions. She didn't rush me. She just held me while I cried and shook and unraveled. When I finally pulled away, her hands cupped my face gently. Her fingers brushed over the bruised skin on my cheek. Her expression shifted, soft concern hardening into fury. "Did someone do this to you?" she asked, her voice tight. I hesitated, then nodded. "It was my mom," I whispered. "She hit me, and then they told me to leave." Mary drew in a sharp breath, jaw clenched. She looked like she might storm off right then and there to confront them. But she didn't. She took a deep breath, and steadied herself. "Come with me," she said. "You're safe now, I promise." She took my hand, and for the first time that night, I didn't feel alone. Mary led me through quiet streets to her apartment, a small but cozy place tucked away from the chaos of the city. When she opened the door and ushered me inside, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: warmth. There were blankets folded neatly on the couch, pictures of family on the walls, the soft smell of vanilla in the air. "Sit down, sweetheart," she said, guiding me to the kitchen table. "You look exhausted." I obeyed, too tired to argue. She moved around the kitchen, grabbing a bowl, heating up some soup, pouring a glass of water. She didn't ask a million questions. She didn't demand an explanation. She just took care of me. When she placed the bowl of soup in front of me, I hesitated. No one had done this for me before. Not when I was sick. Not when I was scared. Not even when I was at my worst. "Eat," she said softly. "We'll talk after." The first sip sent warmth coursing through my body. I hadn't realized how hungry I was until the bowl was empty. Mary sat across from me the whole time, silent, watching. When I finished, she folded her hands. "Now," she said, "tell me everything." I swallowed hard, eyes drifting to the tabletop. "I don't even know where to start." "Start anywhere," she said. So I did. They never wanted me. The words came out flat, emotionless. They always loved Adam. He was perfect. I was just there. Mary didn't interrupt. "I got a C+ on a test today," I continued. "And that was it. They said I wasn't worth it anymore. That I didn't belong. My mom." I reached up, lightly touching my cheek. She hit me. And then they told me to leave. Silence filled the room. Mary didn't speak right away. But her eyes said everything. She was angry. Really angry. "I always knew they were harsh," she said, her voice shaking. "But this is beyond cruel." More tears welled in my eyes. But this time I wasn't just sad. I was furious. "How could they do that?" I asked, voice cracking. "How could they sleep at night knowing they kicked out their own kid?" Mary reached across the table and took my hand. "Mia, listen to me." Her voice was firm. "Certain. You are not a failure. You are not worthless. You are smart. You are strong. And you didn't deserve any of this." I swallowed hard. For so long I had believed the opposite. That I was the problem. That if I had just tried harder, they would have loved me. But maybe it was never about me at all. That night, I slept in Mary's guest room. No yelling through the walls. No pressure sitting on my chest. Just soft blankets. A quiet hallway. And the feeling of being somewhere I might actually belong. The next morning, Mary made scrambled eggs and toast. Simple, but more meaningful than anything I'd had in years. She sat across from me with a cup of coffee, watching as I ate. "You can stay here," she said. "For as long as you need." I hesitated. "I don't want to be a burden." Mary raised an eyebrow. "Mia, you are not a burden. You never were." Her words hit me harder than I expected. Maybe the problem had never been me. Maybe it had always been them. With Mary's support, I started to rebuild my life. She helped transfer me to a new school, a fresh start where no one knew my past. At first, it was hard. I flinched at loud voices. I always felt like I had to prove myself to everyone, teachers, classmates, even Mary. But she never made me feel small. Never made me feel like I wasn't enough. "You're smart, Mia," she'd say. "You can do anything." I worked harder than I ever had. Not for anyone's approval this time, but for myself. Slowly, things changed. I started doing well in school. Really well. I discovered that I loved reading, writing, and learning things for the sake of learning, not just to avoid punishment. I found my voice. Meanwhile, Adam stayed behind. Still in that cold, perfect house. Still under the crushing weight of our parents' expectations. We barely spoke in those early years. A part of me was still angry at him. He hadn't helped me when I was thrown out. He hadn't said a word. But another part of me worried. He might have been the favorite, but he was still trapped. He hadn't escaped. I had. One night, I was scrolling through schoolwork on Mary's couch when my phone lit up. A name appeared that made my stomach drop. Adam. My hands froze. "Adam. Hey, can we talk?" I stared at the message. Part of me wanted to ignore it. To shut the door on that entire part of my life. But I couldn't. Something in me knew he was reaching out for a reason. I typed back, "Me. What's going on?" His reply came quickly. "Adam. Can we meet? I need to get away for a bit." I could sense the tension in his words. This wasn't the polished, confident brother I remembered. This was someone unsure, worn down. 1 hour later, we met at a quiet cafe near Mary's apartment. When he walked in, I barely recognized him. His eyes were tired. His posture slouched, and his fingers tapped nervously on the table. "Hey," I said, keeping my tone flat. "Hey," he replied, voice strained. We sat in silence for a while, the air between us thick with everything unsaid. Finally, Adam spoke. "Mom and Dad are choking me," he said. "They control everything. I told them I wanted to apply to a performing arts school, and they lost it. Said I was throwing my life away." I blinked. "You wanted to go to art school?" He gave a bitter laugh. "Yeah, I love music. Always have. But they never cared about that. They said it's a waste of talent, that I'm wasting my potential." I looked at him. Really looked at him. Not as the perfect brother who had it all, but as someone just as stuck as I had once been. He wasn't free, not even close. "I can't do it anymore," he said. "I wake up every day afraid of disappointing them. Afraid of not being perfect. It's exhausting." I knew that feeling too well. "I used to think you had it so easy," I admitted. He looked down, ashamed. "I didn't. I just learned to hide it better." I took a deep breath. "Then leave." Adam stared at me. "What? Leave?" I repeated. "You don't owe them your life. If you don't want what they're forcing on you, walk away." He shook his head. "It's not that easy. I live with them. They pay for everything. My school, my food, my clothes. If I leave, I've got nothing." I leaned back thinking. He was right. I had Mary. He didn't. Until now. "Come stay with me," I said. His eyes widened. "I mean it." I told him. "If you want out, I'll help you. We'll figure it out together." Adam stared at me. Silent. Then slowly, he nodded. "Okay." That was the moment everything changed. I had spent years believing Adam was lucky, that he got the love I never received. But now I saw it clearly. He was just as trapped. The difference was, I'd already broken free. Now it was his turn. The night Adam left that house, the air felt electric with tension. He packed one bag, just like I had years before. But this time, it was his choice. He wasn't being thrown out. He was walking away. Mary and I waited in her car a block away. My stomach twisted. I knew our parents wouldn't let him go quietly. They'd fight, guilt him, try to scare him into staying. But he was ready. 15 minutes later, the front door opened. Adam stepped outside with his bag. Behind him, our parents stood in the doorway. Even from a distance, I could see the fury in their eyes. Mary gripped the steering wheel tightly. "Is he ready for this?" she asked. I nodded, though my chest ached. "He has to be." Adam moved down the front steps, slowly, shoulders tense. Our father's voice boomed from behind him. "If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back." Adam froze. Years of conditioning, of obedience, of fear, it all clung to him in that moment. But then he stepped forward. "Then I won't come back," he said. Our mother laughed bitterly. "You're making a mistake, Adam. You're nothing without us." My hands clenched into fists. I'd heard those same words. They were designed to break you. Adam turned back one last time. "No," he said quietly. "I was nothing with you." And then he walked away. He got in the car, and Mary pulled off, not looking back. I watched him breathe out, like a weight had finally lifted from his chest. He was free. That night, he stayed in the same guest room I had once cried myself to sleep in. He barely spoke. He was still processing. But he was safe. And something about him already looked different. Lighter. Later, as we sat in the kitchen with mugs of tea between us, he whispered, "I should have done this sooner." "You did it when you were ready," I said. "That's what matters." Mary reached over and squeezed his shoulder. "You'll figure it out, Adam. You're not alone." I nodded beside her. "We've got you." In that moment, I realized something. I had always thought my family was broken beyond repair, that I'd never have anyone who understood what I'd been through. But now, sitting beside Adam, I saw it differently. Maybe we weren't broken. Maybe we were finally breaking free. The days that followed felt strange. Adam was finally out of that house, but it would take time for him to fully settle into this new life. At first he barely spoke. He kept his head down, spent long stretches of the day just thinking. But slowly, I started to see glimmers of who he really was. He picked up his guitar again, something he'd been forced to give up to meet our parents' expectations. He talked more, about music, about writing, about what he wanted, not what they wanted. It was strange seeing him without that constant weight pressing on him. but it was also incredible. One evening, we were sitting on Mary's small balcony, looking out at the city lights. Adam turned to me. "Do you ever think about them?" he asked quietly. I exhaled slowly, fingers curled around a warm mug. "I used to," I admitted. "For years I wanted them to regret everything. I wanted them to realize what they'd done, and beg me to come back." He nodded, staring down at his hands. "And now?" I looked out at the skyline. "Now I don't care anymore." And I meant it. I had spent so long hoping for some kind of apology, some recognition, but I didn't need it anymore. They weren't part of my life. I was better without them. Adam was quiet for a long time, then nodded. "I think I'm getting there too." We sat in silence, the past slowly fading behind us. The next few months were filled with change. I buried myself in schoolwork, determined to build a life on my own terms. Adam started writing and recording music again, not for approval, not for validation, but because it made him feel alive. For the first time, we were both choosing our futures. And then, one day, Mary said something that shifted everything again. We were sitting in the living room, laughing over something dumb Adam had written into one of his lyrics, when she looked at us, thoughtful. "What if we did something with all of this?" she asked. Adam raised an eyebrow. "With my music?" She shook her head. "With what you've both been through." We looked at her, confused. She leaned forward, eyes alight with purpose. "What if we created a place for kids like you, ones who feel unwanted, pressured, alone? A place where they can just be, no judgment, no impossible expectations." I blinked. "What kind of place?" "A community center," she said. "With programs, music, art, tutoring, somewhere kids can go and feel seen, safe." The idea hit me like a wave. I thought about who I'd been at 8 years old, wandering the streets, hungry, cold, rejected. What if I'd had a place to go back then? Adam sat up straighter, suddenly energized. "We could have open mics, music classes, mentorships." "Exactly," Mary nodded. "A space for kids to grow into who they are, not who someone else wants them to be." I looked at Adam, and he looked at me. We didn't need to say it. We were in. It took months of planning, fundraising, and late nights, but eventually, the Anderson Community Center became real. We named it after ourselves, not to honor our parents, but to reclaim the name, to give it a new meaning, a better one. The center was small at first, a rented space, some second-hand equipment, a lot of hope, but every time I stepped inside, I felt like we were doing something that mattered, not chasing approval, not proving ourselves, just helping kids who needed a place to land. And then, just when I thought I had finally put the past behind me, it came back. It was a quiet afternoon. I was alone at the center, organizing schedules and class lists, when my phone rang. Unknown number. Something in my stomach turned. I answered, unsure why. "Hello? Mia." I froze. It had been years since I heard that voice. My mother. She didn't waste time. "We need to talk," she said. I gripped the edge of the desk. "We really don't." She let out an annoyed sigh. "Mia, enough with the attitude. We've been patient, but this little act of rebellion has gone on long enough." I almost laughed. Rebellion? Did she think I had built a whole life just to spite her? "What do you want?" I asked flatly. "We've been thinking about the future," she said, "and we believe it's time for you to come home." My stomach turned. Home? As if she hadn't thrown me out. As if she hadn't hit me. As if I hadn't wandered the streets alone, at 8 years old, because of her. "You're older now," she continued. "You need something stable. That community center nonsense won't last forever." My chest tightened. She hadn't changed. Not at all. I took a deep breath, and kept my voice calm. "Let me make something clear," I said. "You stopped being my family the day you put your hands on me, and told me to leave." She was silent. I continued. "I used to dream about this moment. About you realizing you were wrong, wanting me back." I paused. "But now, I don't need anything from you. Mia. Be reasonable." "No, I am being reasonable." I stood up, walking to the window of the center, looking out at the building we'd built with our own hands. "I'm not coming back. Ever. You don't control me anymore." There was a pause, then her voice turned sharp. "You're making a mistake. You'll regret this." I smiled, but she couldn't see it. "No," I said. I regret ever thinking you were capable of loving me." And then I hung up. And just like that, I felt free. The day of the community center's grand opening felt surreal. I stood beside Mary and Adam at the front entrance, watching kids filter in, wide-eyed, curious, hopeful. Some came with sketchbooks, others clutched guitars or notebooks. Some just wandered, unsure of what they were walking into, but needing somewhere to be. This was for them, for the ones like us. Adam strummed quietly on his guitar, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Mom and Dad would hate this," he said. I laughed. "Good." Mary wrapped an arm around each of us. "You two have done something amazing," she said softly. "You've created a real home, not just for yourselves, but for every kid who walks through these doors." I looked around at the space, walls lined with student art, a modest music studio in the back, shelves filled with supplies. It wasn't huge, but it was enough. Enough to make someone feel seen, to make someone feel safe. That day, as I watched the kids come in, something settled in me. Peace. I didn't need my parents' validation anymore. I didn't need their love. I had something better. A real family, the kind I chose. A life built on my own terms. And for the first time, I wasn't trying to survive. I was living.